In today's video, we're taking a look at the latest trade talk. Could the Kraken captain Giordano find his way back to his old team, the Calgary Flames, in time for a playoff run? Would the Edmonton Oilers consider trading offensive defenseman Tyson Barrie to add much needed extra depth in other areas of the team before the playoffs? Could the Maple Leafs also be looking to shop a forward? We have news on the NHL waiver wire. Forbes has released their latest franchise values, which we want to talk about. And did we see the goal of the year last night from the Anaheim Ducks? We'll discuss all that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have all the latest news and rumors here for you today at Top Shelf Hockey. Let's jump right into it. We really do have a lot of news to cover. Of course, we just posted a video a little bit earlier about the Arizona Coyotes situation on that news that broke this evening. So certainly, if you want a full in-depth talk about that, watch that video. Basically, essentially, what's going down is the Coyotes need to pay some bills. They need to pay them quick, or they could be locked out of their arena by December the 20th. If you want to know the full details on those bills and the consequences, check out the other video that was just posted here. I'll link to it in the YouTube cards as well. On the waiver wire, we have news today indicating here that Brendan Perlini of the Oilers and Scott Harrington of the Blue Jackets, which I actually forgot to mention in yesterday's video, were both placed on waivers yesterday. Neither player was claimed, so they can both be assigned to the AHL or certainly have some flexibility there. So both those guys cleared, and we have two new players on waivers today. One being Jason Megna of the Avalanche, 31 years old. He's an undrafted player. Has about 148 or 150 games to his NHL career. Mostly played with the Canucks. That's where he played the most of his hockey, but he's bounced around with a few franchises. Been with the Avalanche organization for a few years. This year so far, he's appeared in 20 games and put up 3 assists. So, to be honest, probably not likely he gets picked up. Probably clears and goes to the minors. And the Islanders have Anatoly Golyshev on waivers, which is a little bit surprising. I'm really surprised he didn't get more of a chance. He was originally a 4th-round pick back in 2016. Didn't come over from Russia until this past offseason, 2021. He signed his ELC contract. Has been playing in the American Hockey League this year. So far, played 15 games, put up 5 goals and a few assists. Looked like decent progress for his first year in North America. And even though the Islanders are in the midst of a major struggle, yes, they won last night to end the losing streak against Ottawa, but prior to that, they lost, was it 10 or 11 in a row, struggled scoring goals. This guy has potential offensive upside, and he never got a look. They called up other players, and he was never one of them. He never got a chance. So essentially now he's on waivers for the purpose of terminating his contract. So Golyshev has essentially said, if you're not going to give me a chance, I want to go back and play in Russia. Let's just terminate the contract and move on. So that's basically what is going down. Hard to say if he'll ever make another stab at going back to the NHL or how that will work out for him. A few injury updates here as well. The Penguins have announced that winger Jake Gensel is going to be out week to week, so they've certainly had their fair share of injuries. That's not good for them. One of their premier goal scorers there. And we also got word today that the Hawks forward Jujhar Khaira, who suffered I don't know what you want to call it, but certainly a concussion for sure last night, and an absolute major hit from Rangers defenseman Jacob Trouba, was essentially knocked out before he even hit the ice last night in a crushing hit from Trouba. There was no supplemental discipline on the play. It was deemed a clean hit, and from my vantage point, it did look like Trouba's focal point of contact was like the chest shoulder area. There could have been a little bit of incidental contact with the head, but that is technically legal if the focal point is another part like the chest or shoulder or etc. So you could tell. I mean, I was watching the game live when it happened. He was out almost immediately before he even hit the ice. A scary situation. Ended up getting stretchered off. And Khaira we have reports now that he was taken to hospital and then he was up and around, and he certainly believed to have a concussion, but for all intents and purposes was doing well under the circumstances. He was then released and has gone home, so we certainly want to wish him the best. I know a lot of Hawks fans were convinced that Trouba should be suspended. I'm not on that side of things. I honestly, to me, like I said, my vantage point, and I've watched the replay numerous times just to make sure, to me, it did look like a clean hit. It's one of those situations that was, to me, just a very unfortunate outcome. But that's my take. Feel free to let me know yours in the comments. Ian Cole's been fined $5,000 for kneeing on Jets center iceman Mark Scheifele. Scheifele looked like he was going to be seriously injured on the play, but he did come back and appears to be all right. Devan Dubnyk signed an AHL contract the other day, which we talked about. Apparently, the nature of this is he's only going to play a handful of games down there on a tryout because he will be playing with Team Canada in the Spengler Cup. So this is kind of essentially an opportunity for him to get some game action in ahead of that tournament. So I wasn't aware. I thought it was going to be more so trying to get back to the NHL this year, but that's more likely, going to be a case of him going to the Spengler Cup, playing well, and probably getting more something for the future would be my guess. But that's the plans for Devan Dubnyk. Now, we also saw the article today from Forbes going over the most valuable franchises, something they do every year. We now have 8 teams in the NHL valued at over $1 billion. Of course, led by the Rangers at $2 billion. So that's quite a hefty price tag for the New York Rangers. Obviously, the Arizona Coyotes are at the bottom at $400 million, so there's quite a drastic difference. The Maple Leafs are number 2 at $1.8 billion. The Habs are number 3 at $1.6 billion. The Hawks are number 4 at $1.4 million, and the Bruins are number 5 at $1.3 million. So to have 8 teams now over $1 billion is pretty crazy. Some of the teams in the last 5 years that have seen the largest increase in value include the New York Islanders and the Edmonton Oilers. They have both increased 147% in the past 5 years, now with the Oilers being one of those 8 teams valued at $1 billion or more, $1.1 billion, and the Islanders are now at $950 million, which I believe they were the number 9 ranked team. So they were right below the 8 teams at $1 billion, just shy. And the Devils also saw an increase comparable to that, 142%, and are now valued at $775 million. We just saw the Penguins be sold with Mira Lemieux and Ron Burkle retaining a very small portion of the ownership rights. So to me, given where the Fenway Group bought the Penguins and how that's like a conglomerate of sports teams under one umbrella. And of course, you see even the ones that own the Devils own multiple franchises as well in different sports leagues. To me, I think that's the way of the future. And considering where these values have gone, you have to think that there's going to be some other NHL owners going to look at this and go, you know what, maybe I should sell because I could cash in for a pretty hefty price tag. So be interesting to see if we see more either consolidation or these larger sports groups take over and buy these franchises and kind of become the way of the future. At least that's the way things look to be heading in the sports ownership category here. Now, also, did we see the goal of the year last night? What a phenomenal goal it was between the Ducks and Sabres when Trevor Zegras looked like he was going to attempt the Michigan, like the lacrosse style goal, when you could see him get the puck up on a stick, swinging around to try to get it in like you would on the Michigan. The defenseman Colin Miller for Buffalo was there. He flips it over the net, and Sonny Milano bats it in. And it's certainly an incredible skill, an incredible goal. Zegras himself was like completely shocked that it even worked. Apparently Milano was calling for him and he was yelling Michigan to get him to try to do that move. So there were certainly those two guys that have clicked and really have taken over in Anaheim. I know Troy Terry was like the early story in the Ducks organization, putting up tons of points, playing with Getzlaf. Now Getzlaf was hurt, and these two young guys have certainly taken over. If you haven't seen that goal, you have to find it on the highlights and have a look at it. To me, it's probably going to be the goal of the year, and I'm not really sure that it can be topped. Now, before we get any further into the trade talk section of the video, I do need to pause and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. And guess what? Hockey fans are buzzing because hockey is back. Want to know what else is buzzing? The Lawnmower 4.0 from our friends at Manscaped, who are the global leaders in male grooming, trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. I highly recommend the Performance Package 4.0, which includes their new state-of-the-art Lawnmower 4.0, as well as some other great features. The lawnmower itself has a 7,000 RPM motor, a new multifunction switch that can engage as a travel lock, gives you the ability to turn on an LED spotlight as well for a more precise shave. Also, as I've mentioned on numerous occasions before, Manscaped is about much more than just a trimmer. They have everything, all aspects aspects covered in male grooming, including some great formulations like their brand new ultra premium body wash to keep you smelling great all day long. It's certainly a big hit here. I absolutely love it. They also have other exfoliators and gels to keep all aspects of your grooming needs covered. I highly recommend you check out manscaped.com. Use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using promo code TSH. So thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. On to the trade rumors section of the video today. Of course, we've talked a bit about the Leafs lately, looking to trade a defenseman, likely either Dermott or Hall, but given their circumstances now with different injuries and players out of the lineup, now it's being speculated that they could possibly end up trading a forward instead. Now, either way, they're going to have to be creative and do something soon to create room to bring back goaltender Peter Mrazek from long-term injured reserve, who's currently down in AHL on a conditioning stint, and if everything goes well, he'll be ready to be activated here in the very near future. So they need the space to make that happen. Of course, to bring him up, that means that wall would go down. So obviously, the backup goalie now to Campbell goes back to the minors. That takes his small entry-level deal off the books. So certainly that helps a little bit, but it doesn't get them all the way there. They still need a few $1 million more. That's why it was being reported like a guy like Hall could be a comparable player that has moved. We've seen Justin Hall be scratched on a few occasions as well, but given some injuries in the lineup, especially Rasmus Sandin being out now for a while, they're probably going to hold off on that because they need the depth on the blue line to get them through this next stretch of games until we get them probably past Christmas or so into the new year. So in the interim, Pierre Engvall might be a guy that they can possibly move to accomplish the same sort of thing. Now, the only problem is, especially with Spezza being out for 6 games with a suspension, that's problematic. Obviously, Engvall is another guy who can play center. Spezza can play center. So they'd obviously be a little bit short between the two players. So it depends on when Mrazek's ready to come back. So it might be something that has to wait, or they might have to go down a different road here. Either way, they're going to find themselves, with a tricky situation and tough to compete. But Engvall's a guy who seems to be kind of in and out of the good graces of the coaching staff. Never really fully materialized. I don't think what his full capabilities are. At least when he first came up and got this contract, I think they were expecting a little bit more consistency from him. He's at times been a decent player for him, but at this point, I think it's fair to say long term his projection is probably at best a third line player. Which is certainly something that they have plenty of as well. So they need some cap flexibility, and he might end up being the one to go. Of course, they have to find a deal. There has to be a trading partner to make that happen. We haven't heard of any rumors suggesting there's any specific teams that are, interested per se, but that's what the Leafs are up to. They need to find some space, and it's going to be a depth piece that ends up going, obviously, to make it happen. Now, could the Edmonton Oilers end up trading Tyson Barrie? Now, at the beginning of the year, or even into the offseason when they re-signed him, this is not something that we would have really thought we'd be talking about, but clearly the Oilers having a good season. They're getting a heck of an offensive run here out of McDavid and Draisaitl. No big surprise, but they continue to elevate their game and take it to new heights again this year. But we saw a situation, of course, with Darnell Nurse being out for a while, that Evan Bouchard has really emerged as being NHL ready and able to really give them a lot of the same offensive numbers. If you look at the stats, Bouchard is outperforming Barrie in a lot of ways, and he's making far less money. So not that they don't like Barrie per se, but certainly between Nurse and Bouchard, they certainly have their fill of offensive capabilities back there that Barrie could become expendable if they want to create some salary cap space in order to free up room to make some extra depth here in other positions. There's been a lot of rumors about goaltending. What are they going to do? Is Mike Smith going to be healthy? Koskinen's done all right for them, which is surprising, but a good thing for sure. Lots of speculation there. They could use some more depth in the bottom 6 even, like a guy like Perlini just goes on waivers today. Had a good preseason. Hasn't really worked out in the NHL regular season, though. Another version, perhaps like a Ty Ratty, come on, had a surprise preseason, got a spot, and then overtime fizzled out quickly and just couldn't find it anymore. But the Oilers need that flexibility, like a lot of teams, tough up against the cap. So there is certainly a lot of question marks here that he could be on the move. There was an Athletic article talking about the possibility here that it's something that the Oilers really should consider doing, given the emergence of Bouchard, Nurse is back now. Of course, you never know what you're going to run into injury-wise, especially in a playoff run. But it's not anything for sure that the Oilers are going to do. There's really not a lot of rumors suggesting that he's being actively shopped. This one was just more like an article suggesting that it's something the Oilers should do. It makes a lot of sense, and I do tend to agree that if they're getting all that the play out of Bouchard for a much cheaper price, then it makes sense. Maybe they should consider moving on from Barrie. To be honest, given his offensive capabilities, I can't see why there wouldn't be a market for him with the NHL teams always looking for defenders, especially somebody who can produce the way he does. Now, lastly, I want to take a look at the possibility of Mark Giordano heading back to the Flames by the deadline. Certainly some information from Chris Johnston of TSN as well as the Toronto Star suggesting that it might be something that we could see happen. Apparently there's been some initial discussions, some tire kicking if you will, and there has been some belief that Giordano, regardless of where he ends up, very well could be traded by the deadline given the fact that the Seattle Kraken at this point are not projected to be a playoff team. I mean, you never know. It's a long season, and even though they started not so great, they did have a good run of games there where they certainly beat some top teams in the NHL. So there's still some question marks in their division too. It's not a given, but right now you have to think that the odds are against them to get into the playoffs, given the other teams, especially if Vancouver gets a push on from the coaching change. Vegas is going to continue to get better as the year goes on and they get healthier and hopefully get Jack Eichel back. They've dealt with a lot of adversity this year. The Flames obviously are doing well. The Oilers are doing well. So, there's a chance the Kraken get in, but it's not great. So do they keep their first ever captain of franchise history? Maybe talk about an extension? He's made it already clear he has no intentions of retiring and wants to continue playing. So certainly there's desire from that perspective, but you'd have to think his next contract, given his age, it's probably going to come in a fair bit cheaper than what he's making now, which was the only main reason why Calgary exposed him in the first place in the expansion draft. He had 1 year left, over $6 million, and they just couldn't take the chance that either Rasmus Andersson or the newly signed Chris Tanev or Noah Hannafin was taking an expansion. It just didn't make sense. They're much younger and arguably a bigger part of the futures, right? So Giordano became exposed and made a lot of sense for them to take. So clearly, what would the price be to bring Giordano back? It's not really exactly clear, but you have to think it wouldn't be a huge cost. Would the Kraken be looking for maybe another younger roster player who might be able to help? Would they maybe take Juuso Välimäki? Välimäki's been a player looking for more playing time that the Flames have kind of not really been overly fond of. You got to really acknowledge the emergence of Oliver Shillington. It's kind of pushed him down the chart enough that he's not really getting a lot of chance. Maybe that would get it done. If they're not going to play him anyways, why not bring back Giordano? There'd have to be some salary retention on Seattle's part. They'd have to get creative from a cap perspective. But could the captain from one team return to be the captain of his old team? And it's certainly a possibility. It's something that is being discussed, according to Chris Johnson, and it's something that we're going to have to monitor here as the season goes on. With the way the Flames are playing, it's fair to say they would certainly more than likely look to add at the deadline, and the blue line would be certainly a big piece for them to look at. They're getting great goaltending. Their top couple lines of forwards are producing extremely well. Wouldn't be shocked if they tried to trade Sean Monahan. He's a player I still think very well could be moved, but that's not going to be easy as well, given his contract and the way his play hasn't been great. To me, since he had that hip injury, it hasn't really been quite the same, and that could be playing a big role into why he's not quite the same player. But having Giordano go back to Calgary certainly would be interesting. Let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.